You know that feeling, that swirling knot right in your stomach?
Oh, yeah.
The thoughts just racing like frantic mice in a cage, maybe? And the tension, it just tightens your jaw, your shoulders. You feel like you're bracing for something.
Mm-hmm. Constantly on edge.
It's the weight of worry. It
Yeah.
really is. That constant mental hum of, what if this goes wrong? Or, what if that never
Right.
happens?
Could be about anything, work, money.
Your kids, relationships, just the sheer unpredictability of tomorrow, I guess. It
Yeah.
feels universal, doesn't it? Like a tax you just have to pay for being alive sometimes.
It absolutely is. And, like you said, a certain baseline level of concern,
Mm,
that can actually be useful. It can push us to prepare, maybe plan a bit, take action.
sure.
But that excessive worry, the kind that just spirals and becomes chronic,
Yeah,
the kind that paralyzes you instead of prompting action,
right.
that's where it really crosses the line.
Right. From natural feeling to something
Yeah,
debilitating.
exactly. It's not just in your head. It has real concrete consequences in your life.
Totally. And that's actually why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking into a source that has, honestly, for generations now, been a guide for dealing with this exact problem.
The classic.
A total classic. We're digging into excerpts from Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, first published, way back in 1948?
That's right. A long time ago.
Yeah, so this isn't some, fleeting self-help trend. It's really grounded in timeless human experience. And honestly, the wisdom in it feels not just relevant today, but maybe even more crucial now.
I think so, too, with our hyper-connected information overload world.
Exactly. It feels more needed than ever.
It really does have this enduring relevance. Carnegie's basic idea, which he lays out right from the start in the introduction, is that worry, yes, it's part of being human, stress, anxiety, they're just part of navigating life.
Hmm.
But he draws this really sharp line when it becomes excessive. That's the point where it stops being a natural response and starts being genuinely damaging. And he looks at the roots. Often it comes from that deep fear of the unknown,
Right.
or feeling like you lack control over things, over your circumstances,
Yeah.
or maybe just being overwhelmed by external pressures that feel too big.
And his core message, the argument he builds throughout the whole book, it's so direct, almost confronting, really.
Yeah.
Worrying does not solve your problems, period.
Full stop. Yeah.
In fact, he argues, pretty forcefully sometimes, that it almost always makes things worse.
Right. It's not productive.
It's destructive.
Yeah.
So instead of getting trapped in that churning cycle of anxiety, he points you towards a fundamentally different approach. It's very pragmatic.
Pragmatic how?
It's about actively doing things, consciously letting go of what you can't control, and deliberately grounding yourself in the only moment you actually have, which is the present.
And the reason he really hammers this home isn't just philosophical, is it? He spends a lot of time detailing the very real, often quite severe negative impacts of too much worry.
He does.
We're not just talking about feeling a bit stressed before a presentation. He points to specific, serious consequences. Mentally, yes, absolutely chronic fatigue, terrible sleeplessness, the start of anxiety disorders.
Right.
But he makes this incredibly compelling case that worry isn't just a mental thing stuck in your head. It takes a profound physical toll, too.
That's huge.
Yeah, he talks about how it can contribute directly to serious physical problems like high blood pressure, heart disease, ulcers,
Yeah.
a whole list of stress-related conditions. It literally wears your body down.
That physical burden, that's such a critical point he makes in the source material. It really elevates worry from just, an emotional inconvenience to a significant health risk.
Totally.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to really slow down and unpack these core principles, these techniques, pulling them straight from the excerpts we have. We want to understand what excessive worry truly costs you, not just peace of mind, but in tangible ways. And maybe more importantly, explore how Carnegie offers a path to fundamentally change your relationship with it. It's about adopting that pragmatic, action-oriented approach he talks about.
Acting more, letting go more.
Yeah, finding a deeper sense of peace by intentionally living in the present. Ultimately, it's about equipping you, the listener, with these practical tools.
It's about moving from being sort of a victim of worry to becoming an active agent, right?
Yeah.
In managing your own response to life's challenges, giving you something concrete you can actually do.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this then. Where Carnegie really kicks things off is by confronting us with something pretty fundamental: the incredibly high cost of worry, And then, in stark contrast, the surprising power that actually resides in the present moment.
He links those two very tightly.
Yeah.
He really does dedicate significant space to this early on. He doesn't just vaguely say, oh, worry is costly. He, itemizes it. It's not just the emotional drain, that feeling of being constantly on edge, the mental fatigue. He talks about financial implications that can happen from poor decisions made under stress.
Makes sense.
The mental toll that just saps your creativity and focus. And yeah, as we mentioned, the very significant physical cost. He uses examples, even statistics from his time, to show how prolonged worry wasn't just an inconvenience. It was literally shortening lives.
Wow.
Causing immense suffering through physical illness. He talks about people literally worrying themselves sick.
He gets specific, too, doesn't he? Mentioning things like high blood pressure, heart disease.
Exactly.
He uses this really vivid language, too, saying worry steals joy and energy.
Yeah, I remember that line.
It's not passive. It's an active thief, robbing you of the vibrancy, the vitality you need to live fully. It's like a slow leak, just constantly draining your reserves.
And what's really insightful here, I think, is a contrast he draws between worry and action. He sets them up almost as, opposing forces. Worry, the way he describes it, is this internal circular thing. It's characterized by rumination, just going over potential problems endlessly in your mind, often fixating on things that might happen, future stuff that's usually outside your direct control.
Spinning your wheels mentally.
Totally. Spinning your wheels. Action, on the other hand, that's about engaging with reality, taking concrete, productive steps, dealing with challenges directly, or preparing in a tangible way.
Right.
Worry doesn't actually change the outcome of a situation. It just changes how you feel about it, usually making you feel worse.
Definitely worse.
But taking action, that actually has the potential to change the outcome, or at least change your position relative to it.
So if we drill down on this, a key insight really emerges here from Carnegie. Worry takes a significant physical toll on your body. It's not just in your head.
Absolutely not.
This relentless cycle of stress and anxiety, it manifests physically, as illness even. Recognizing this is crucial because it reframes managing worry. It's not just a nice to have for feeling better mentally.
No, it's essential.
It's an essential practice for maintaining your physical health. Learning to release that excessive worry isn't just about emotional well-being. It's about protecting your body from real harm.
Exactly. It's not a luxury item. It's fundamental to your overall health, your resilience.
Yeah.
And this understanding of the cost, especially the drain on your energy and health, leads right into one of Carnegie's most famous, most practical strategies for fighting back.
The day-tight compartments.
That's the one.
This analogy is so good, isn't it? He uses the image of the hull of a big ship.
Yeah.
Those ships aren't just one big open space inside. They're divided into watertight compartments.
Right, for safety.
Exactly. If one section gets breached, if it starts filling with water, you can seal it off, contain the damage so the whole ship doesn't go down. And he applies that principle directly to our minds, to our lives. He urges us to divide our time, our worries, into these day-tight compartments. Seal off yesterday, seal off tomorrow.
The core concept here sounds simple, but it's actually, for most of us, incredibly hard to practice consistently.
Oh, for sure.
It's focusing only on the present moment. He basically pleads with the reader. Refuse to carry the heavy baggage of past regrets, mistakes, failures into today.
Let it go.
Let it go. And, just as important, refuse to carry the daunting weight of future anxieties, potential problems, unknown challenges into today either.
Why is that so important, according to him?
Because trying to juggle all of yesterday, plus all of today, plus all of tomorrow, all at the same time, that's the quickest way to get completely overwhelmed and just paralyzed. You can't function like that.
He makes this really strong, practical point from the source material. Today is the only day you have any actual control over.
Think about it.
Yesterday. It's literally gone. You can learn from it, maybe, but you cannot change a single thing that happened back then.
Nope. Done.
And tomorrow hasn't arrived. It's full of possibilities, sure, but also uncertainties. And so many things we worry might happen. They never even come to pass.
Right. Wasted energy.
Your power, your ability to influence things, to take action, to live, it only exists right now, in this moment, in this day. So by focusing your energy, your attention, squarely on today's tasks, today's interactions, today's challenges, you stop yourself from being crushed by the weight of past failures or the huge, often exaggerated scale of future worries.
And this brings us to a really key takeaway that flows right from that ship analogy. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. Focusing your mental energy squarely on today lets you take meaningful, actionable steps without being burdened or paralyzed by what's already happened or what might happen down the road.
That sounds freeing.
What kind of freedom does that unlock for you?
Seriously, imagine the mental space, the energy you reclaim when you're not constantly dragging yesterday's worries forward or mentally fast-forwarding to tomorrow's potential disasters.
Mm.
It's about making the sheer task of living manageable. You can handle today. It's trying to handle every day all at once that breaks us. It really does feel like a release, just thinking about it, like dropping this heavy backpack you didn't even fully realize you were carrying, this date-tight compartments idea. It really seems like the foundational principle for managing that overwhelming feeling.
It's the starting point.
Yeah, it's the absolute starting point.
And once you start to grasp the importance, the real practical power of anchoring yourself in the present, the next logical step in Carnegie's method is to develop techniques for actively analyzing specific worries when they inevitably pop up.
Because they still will.
Exactly. Living in daytight compartments doesn't mean worries magically vanish forever. It means having a method for dealing with them when they arise, but dealing with them within the context of today.
Okay.
He doesn't just vaguely say, don't worry. He gives you concrete steps for how to dissect them, address them head on, instead of just letting them swirl around and consume you.
Right. And one of the very first techniques he presents in the sources, it's a bit counterintuitive, maybe sounds a little scary at first glance, but it's incredibly powerful.
Which one's that?
The worst case scenario method.
Oh, yes. Sounds dramatic.
It does, doesn't it? The instruction is simple, though. Force yourself to stop, get quiet, and ask yourself directly, what is the worst, the absolute worst that could possibly happen as a result of this thing I'm worrying about?
It definitely takes some courage to actually do that, to face it.
Yeah.
But Carnegie's point, and this is based on his, vast experience and observations of people dealing with worry, is that when you force yourself to stop the vague, anxious swirling and actually name the worst outcome.
Put a label on it.
Yeah, visualize it, stare it down mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You often discover two things. First, the reality of the worst case is rarely as catastrophic as the undefined sort of monstrous fear that was lurking in the shadows of your mind.
Vague fears are always bigger.
Much bigger, much more terrifying than concrete possibilities. And second, even if the worst case happens, it's usually not the end of the world. Life will somehow go on.
And there's a real practical power that comes from doing that, from facing that worst case scenario mentally and just accepting it as a possibility.
How so?
Well, it helps you move out of that paralyzed state of fear. Once you've identified the worst thing that could happen and you've accepted, okay, yes, that is a potential outcome, you've robbed that feel of a lot of its power.
Takes the sting out of it.
Exactly. The unknown is often what terrifies us most. By bringing the feared outcome into the light, looking at it, accepting it as possible, then you can calmly start thinking, okay, what would I do if that happened? What steps would I take?
Ah, I see. It shifts you.
It shifts you from blind panic to sort of reasoned preparation.
This leads us right to a core principle here. By imagining the worst case outcome and consciously accepting it as a possibility, you fundamentally change your relationship with the fear itself.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you shift your focus from the terrifying what if to the practical what now, or maybe what then. This drastically reduces the paralyzing grip of fear and anxiety about the unknown because you've acknowledged it and started mentally mapping out a response.
And that process, that acceptance, leads directly into the next very decisive step Carnegie outlines right after considering the worst case. Solve the problem or accept it.
This is where the pragmatism really kicks in hard.
It really does. His advice is almost startlingly direct. If, after analyzing the situation, you can see concrete steps you can take to solve the problem or at least mitigate the negative outcome,
Then do it.
then you must take action, do it, put your energy there. On the other hand, if you figure out that the situation or its potential outcome is genuinely beyond your control,
Something you just cannot change.
something you cannot change, influence, or solve through any action on your part, then the only healthy, rational option left is to consciously, deliberately accept it.
He points out that a huge amount of chronic worry comes precisely from being stuck in that limbo state. Between a problem we haven't analyzed clearly and a situation where we haven't decided if we can act or if we just need to accept. We feel powerless because we haven't made that decision.
Right. Indecision is paralyzing.
Totally. But by taking decisive action to solve what you can solve, or by making the conscious, sometimes brave choice to accept the reality of what cannot be changed,
Yeah.
you liberate yourself. You
Yeah.
break free from that endless energy-sapping loop of overthinking and the crushing burden of unresolved worry
You move from passive anxiety.
to either active problem-solving or potentially peaceful, realistic acceptance.
Which brings us to another really powerful takeaway from this section. When you consciously choose to accept the things that are genuinely beyond your ability to control or change, it frees up an incredible amount of mental and emotional energy.
Energy that was being wasted.
Exactly. Energy that was previously tied up in resisting reality, in agonizing over the unchangeable. When you release that resistance, that energy becomes available again.
Available for what?
To focus on areas where you do have influence, where you can take action, or maybe simply to find some peace in the present moment. It's about bringing clarity and focus back to you, back to where your agency actually lies in your response, your attitude, and your actions today.
It's a powerful act of reclaiming your mental space. It really is.
Yeah.
So, okay. By now, hopefully, you're getting a clearer picture of the high cost of worry, the protective power of living in the present, and this method for analyzing specific worries: face the worst, decide to solve or accept.
Right.
But, as Carnegie definitely acknowledges, it's not like you just read these ideas and poof, the worry habit disappears forever.
If only.
Wouldn't that be nice? Worry is, for so many people, a deeply ingrained pattern. It's a habit formed over years. And breaking any habit requires conscious effort and consistent practice.
Absolutely. He's very realistic about this. He doesn't promise some magic bullet. Breaking the worry habit isn't an automatic switch you flip.
Yeah.
It takes dedication, vigilance, consistent effort to apply these principles day after day after day. But the incredibly encouraging news is, because it is a habit, a learned behavior pattern, that means it can be unlearned.
That's the hope.
You can consciously replace the old, unhelpful pattern of worrying with new, more productive and peace-promoting habits.
And he details several specific, actionable techniques in the sources for doing this work, this habit replacement. One really fundamental technique is consciously pushing yourself to take action instead of just giving in to rumination.
So when the worry starts,
When that familiar wave of worry starts to rise, that urge to just endlessly think about the problem, you deliberately redirect that energy. You ask yourself, okay, what is one small thing I can actually do right now?
doesn't have to be huge.
Not at all. Even if it just relates to the problem tangentially or just moves you forward in some way, making a phone call, sending an email, researching one tiny piece of information, even just cleaning your desk, that physical action interrupts the cycle of unproductive thought.
He also talks about the critical importance of actively engaging your mind in activities that are constructive, things that keep worrying thoughts from crowding in.
Distraction, but positive distraction.
Kind of, yeah. He lists examples that seem simple but are profoundly effective. Reading a book that really requires focus, engaging in regular physical exercise, dedicating time to a hobby you genuinely enjoy, losing yourself in meaningful work.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to fill your mental space with positive, absorbing content and activities so there's literally less room for the negative, anxious thoughts to take root and spiral out of control.
Like weeding a garden and planting flowers instead.
Exactly like that. Cultivating a garden, fill it with good plants so the weeds can't take over.
And he includes practices that directly address that agitated state worry creates in the body and mind. Things like mindfulness and deep breathing exercises.
Which can sound a bit out there sometimes.
Maybe, but they're presented as practical physiological tools, not just esoteric concepts. Focusing on your breath, practicing mindfulness just to observe your thoughts without judging them. That helps ground you in the present moment when your mind is trying to race off into hypothetical futures.
Like an anchor.
Exactly. They provide an anchor in the middle of that mental storm. They help calm the nervous system, which is often totally in overdrive when you're worrying constantly.
This connects so powerfully with another core understanding Carnegie shares. Maybe the most effective way to stop the process of worrying is by taking action.
Action itself.
Yeah, it's not just about solving problems, it's about breaking the spell of worry. The more you practice acting, even in small ways, when you feel that impulse to worry, the more you empower yourself.
You prove it to yourself.
You demonstrate to yourself that you are capable, that you are not paralyzed. And this builds a sense of agency that directly fights back against worry's grip. Action really is the engine for change in breaking this habit.
And hand in hand with taking action, Carnegie puts significant emphasis on deliberately cultivating peace of mind through positive thinking.
Okay, positive thinking. This phrase sometimes gets a bad rap.
It can sound a bit simplistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like you're just ignoring reality, putting on rose-colored glasses.
Right.
But Carnegie doesn't present it that way at all.
Yeah.
He presents it as a powerful, active, and actually quite pragmatic antidote to the destructive nature of worry.
Okay, explain that. Why is it effective as a strategy, not just a feeling?
Well, he argues that positive thoughts actively work to create a different kind of mental environment for you to live in. So, instead of your inner world being this landscape dominated by fear, scarcity, potential disaster, you deliberately cultivate one based on hope, possibility, resilience, gratitude.
So it's not denying problems exist.
Not at all. It's about actively shaping your internal world so you're better equipped to deal with the reality that exists, challenges it all.
He emphasizes this isn't passive, right? It's an active process.
Very active.
Right.
Requires conscious effort. It's not just wishing you felt more positive.
No magical thinking.
No. It's about deliberately replacing negative thoughts with affirmations. Consciously focusing your attention on the positive aspects, even small ones, of a difficult situation. Actively seeking out reasons to be grateful. It's like training your brain, literally retraining your neural pathways to look for solutions, opportunities, sources of strength, instead of automatically defaulting to anticipating problems and dangers.
It's about consciously choosing where you direct your mental energy, instead of letting your mind automatically go to the worst-case scenario, which is worry's default.
Right.
You train yourself to look for potential good, to focus on finding solutions, to maybe even expect positive outcomes where that's realistic. It's a deliberate, active redirection of precious mental energy towards constructive possibilities.
And this leads to another really profound takeaway. Positive thinking isn't just about feeling happier in the moment. It's a powerful tool for reframing challenges.
How so?
It helps you see problems not just as obstacles, but potentially as opportunities for growth, for learning something new. By intentionally practicing this, replacing negative, fearful thoughts with hopeful, constructive ones, you can significantly reduce chronic anxiety. You create the internal conditions needed to live with more peace and resilience.
So the question for you, the listener, is maybe, how could you actively shape your internal dialogue, starting today?
Yeah, it's not about being naive. It's about strategically building your mental strength.
So we've dug into analyzing specific worries, the power of action, the importance of a positive mindset. But Carnegie also talks about how broader factors like stress and anxiety fit into this whole picture, often bringing us back to those core principles he introduced right at the start.
Yes, he consistently reinforces that fundamental idea. The vast majority of chronic worry, and therefore a lot of our debilitating stress and anxiety, it comes from dwelling on the past.
Things we regret can't change.
Exactly. Or fixating on the future.
Things we fear can't predict.
Right. He keeps bringing it back to that central truth. Those realms, past and future, they're outside our immediate control. Yet they consume this huge portion of our thoughts and feelings, and that's what fuels our anxiety.
And that's precisely why the power of the present moment comes up again and again in the source material. It's like a recurring solution. Our ability to act, to respond, to find peace. Our entire sphere of influence exists only in the now. Worrying about a past mistake, that's just regret, self-recrimination.
Pointless, right?
Worrying about a future event, that's speculation built on fear. Neither of those mental states changes what's happening right now, but boy, do they steal the energy you do have available in the present.
And he elaborates on techniques for actively cultivating that presence. He mentions practices like mindfulness and meditation, again, not as abstract concepts, but as practical disciplines. Tools, exactly. Their purpose is precisely to help you pull your attention back, again and again, to what is happening in this specific moment. Feeling your breath, noticing your surroundings, fully engaging in whatever task is at hand. They serve as deliberate anchors to stop your mind from drifting uncontrollably into those anxiety factories of past regrets or future fears.
So a key insight that kind of wraps this part together is pretty clear. By practicing living in the present moment, you significantly reduce that pervasive tendency to dwell on past mistakes that just breed guilt, or to worry about future uncertainties that just breed fear.
Right.
By deliberately grounding yourself in the now, you build the capacity to create a calmer, more focused mind, even when things outside are chaotic. It's a skill you cultivate, practice by practice, that builds this internal sanctuary.
And beyond managing the mental side of anxiety and worry, Carnegie also devotes attention to tackling the very real, very uncomfortable physical effects of stress. He talks about relaxation techniques.
Because worry isn't just thoughts, right? It's physical.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It physically tightens your muscles, quickens your heart rate, makes your breathing shallow. It puts your body into this constant state of high alert, maybe even panic.
And he presents relaxation not just as, a pleasant little indulgence, but as a necessary, powerful countermeasure to those physical symptoms.
What kind of techniques?
He lists specific ones designed to interrupt that physical stress response. Deep, diaphragmatic breathing, breathing from your belly. Progressive muscle relaxation, where you systematically tense and then release different muscle groups throughout your body.
Ah, yeah, I've heard of that.
Guided imagery, where you visualize peaceful scenes. He explains that these practices directly promote relaxation, they reduce the physical symptoms of anxiety, and they help you regain a sense of control over your body and mind, which often feel completely out of control when you're deep in worry.
And he broadens this out too, emphasizing the importance of just general well-being habits. He sees them as foundational for mental resilience.
Like what?
He stresses the often underestimated importance of regular physical activity, how just moving your body is such a potent stress reliever. He talks about the necessity of healthy sleep habits, maintaining a balanced diet.
The basics.
The basics. But he presents them not just as general health advice, but as fundamental building blocks that contribute directly to your emotional and mental strength. They make you less susceptible to the grip of stress and worry in the first place.
Which leads to another incredibly practical takeaway from the source. Relaxation is a powerful, accessible tool for directly counteracting stress.
You can actually do something.
Yes, by consistently incorporating regular relaxation practices into your daily or weekly routine, you can actively reduce the physical symptoms that worry and anxiety impose on your body. These aren't optional extras. They are essential tools you can use, starting today, to calm your nervous system and support your resilience.
It's about building a daily practice that makes you stronger from the inside out. It really is.
Yeah.
Now, worry and stress, they aren't just confined to our internal experience, are they? They inevitably spill over and can significantly impact our relationships with other people.
That's a huge area.
Yeah, and Carnegie dedicates attention to how to prevent worry from damaging these really crucial connections.
Okay, so this is a shift in focus. Moving from managing our internal state to managing the interpersonal stuff that worry complicates. A big area he tackles is how we handle complaints and criticism from others.
Which can trigger a lot of worry in itself.
Oh, absolutely. And he offers a surprisingly simple, yet quite challenging to implement approach.
What is it?
Respond to complaints and criticism not with defensiveness, which is most people's first reaction.
Mine too, probably.
Mine too, but respond with patience and empathy.
Empathy
Yeah.
toward someone criticizing you.
Yeah. He suggests that people who are complaining or criticizing are often doing so because they themselves feel unheard or misunderstood or disrespected, or maybe they're just acting out of their own frustrations and worries. So instead of automatically getting caught up in your own internal worry about being judged or attacked, his approach is consciously pause. Listen attentively to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it. Respond with empathy, acknowledge their feelings.
And what does that achieve?
He argues that this approach, surprisingly, often helps to disarm the situation. It de-escalates tension. And rather than damaging the relationship, it can actually help build a stronger connection because you're showing you're willing to listen and try to understand even when it's difficult.
So a key insight here is really about how you handle criticism. Choosing empathy and understanding over getting defensive. That's vital for reducing resentment and fostering genuinely better communication in your relationships.
Think about how much stress and worry in relationships comes from misunderstandings and defensive loops.
A lot,
Yeah.
By choosing a different approach, you can proactively reduce that friction.
And on a somewhat lighter note, maybe, but one he presents with real seriousness regarding its impact, Carnegie talks about the simple power of using humor and smiling.
Ah, yes. He shares some great anecdotes about the therapeutic power of humor. Laughter really is a fantastic tool, isn't it?
It is.
For diffusing tense situations, breaking through awkwardness, just lightening the mood, helping everyone involved regain some perspective. When you can find a moment of shared humor, it just dissolves the tension that worry, conflict, criticism builds up between people.
Reminds us not to take everything quite so seriously.
Exactly.
And he puts a surprising amount of emphasis on the simple, universal act of smiling.
Just smiling.
Just smiling. He presents it as an instant way to break down social barriers and create positive interactions. A genuine smile is disarming. It signals openness, warmth, a lack of threat. It can shift the energy in an interaction immediately, making both you and the other person feel more at ease.
Which directly reduces the potential for worry or friction in that moment. So another practical takeaway emerges here. Humor and intentionally cultivating a positive attitude, maybe expressed through simple things like smiling, can actually transform potentially stressful situations into manageable, even lighthearted moments.
It's not about being fake or a Pollyanna.
No, it's about using these tools strategically to reduce interpersonal anxiety and actively strengthen your relationships by creating a more positive, open environment for connection. It's fascinating how such seemingly simple actions, choosing empathy, finding a moment for a shared laugh, offering a smile, can have such a significant positive impact.
So, wow. We've covered some significant ground in this deep dive into Dale Carnegie's wisdom. We started by confronting the sheer, tangible cost of excessive worry, not just emotional drain, but real financial, mental, and critically physical tolls.
The whole package.
Then we explored his foundational principle, finding power and peace by learning to live in those day-tight compartments of the present moment. We looked at practical, courageous techniques for analyzing specific worries facing the worst, then deciding, solve the problem or accept what cannot be changed.
That decisive step.
We discussed how to tackle the worry habit itself, emphasizing the transformative power of taking action and deliberately cultivating a positive, resilient mindset.
Action and attitude.
We touched upon preventing stress and anxiety by anchoring ourselves in the present, using physical relaxation techniques, building healthy habits.
Body and mind working together.
And finally, we explored how these principles extend outward, helping us manage the worry that can harm our relationships, responding with empathy, using humor, using a smile.
It's a really comprehensive, interconnected approach, isn't it? It's not about finding just one trick. It's about building a whole set of practices.
Yeah.
And in the conclusion of his book, Carnegie comes back to his core message. He powerfully restates his belief. Worry might be natural, a human tendency, but it absolutely does not have to be the dominant force that dictates the quality, the experience of your life.
He holds out that promise.
He holds out the promise that by actively applying these principles, these strategies, by consciously choosing to engage with life differently, you genuinely can gain mastery over your emotional responses.
Yeah.
You can significantly reduce chronic anxiety and ultimately stop letting worry diminish and rule you.
He paints this really vivid picture of the life that becomes possible when you put these principles into practice. A life characterized by, greater confidence, a clearer sense of purpose.
Because your energy isn't being wasted.
Exactly, and a deeper, more abiding peace. And he insists this isn't some unattainable ideal. It's within reach for anyone willing to do the conscious work.
Oh.
By deliberately training yourself to focus your energy, your attention on the present day. By consistently choosing proactive action instead of being paralyzed by fear or indecision, and by intentionally challenging negative thinking patterns to cultivate that positive, resilient, hopeful mindset.
So if we had to distill the absolute essence of this source material into one overarching truth, it would probably be this. The fundamental key to overcoming excessive worry lies in actively living in the present moment, consistently taking decisive action, and deliberately cultivating a positive, resilient mindset.
It's active engagement, not passive reaction.
Precisely. Active engagement with life rather than passive reaction to fear.
And that really is the crucial point, isn't it? This isn't abstract philosophy. It's about applying these strategies consistently, consciously.
Day by day.
It's about the daily practice of trying to stay within that day-tight compartment, catching yourself when your mind drifts to past regrets or future fears, and just gently bringing it back to the now.
Analyzing a worry when it pops up.
Yeah.
Deciding, solve or accept, then acting.
Choosing action over just stewing on it, deliberately looking for the positive perspective, using those simple relaxation tools when the stress starts to build up physically in your body.
These are not just ideas to understand intellectually. They are tools you can pick up and start using today, right where you are.
It takes effort, though.
It requires conscious effort, absolutely. Persistent practice, just like building any new habit. But the promise, as Carnegie compellingly outlines throughout his work, is profound.
What is that promise, ultimately?
A life with significantly reduced anxiety, increased confidence in your ability to handle whatever challenges come your way, a greater sense of purpose because your energy isn't being constantly drained by worry, and ultimately just more peace and more joy in the simple act of living each day.
So, to leave you with a thought, Something maybe to mull over, perhaps even put into practice, building directly on that core Carnegie principle. If the past is indeed gone and unchangeable,
And the future is uncertain, largely beyond our control.
and if all of our power, our life, truly exists only in this single day, what is one worry about tomorrow? Could be big, could be small, that you could consciously choose to acknowledge and then just set aside.
Just for today.
Right now, just for the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
Just seal it away in its own little day-tight compartment and focus all your energy entirely on the compartment you are currently living in.